Welcome to 101 East. I'm Steve Chow. For 2 decades, Cambodia's Somaly Mam has been the face of the country's anti-sex trafficking campaign.
I bring some of survivors with me.
Beautiful, elegant, and articulate, she's raised millions of dollars and won celebrity backing by telling her story of being trafficked into prostitution as a young girl. But following reports that she'd lied about her past, she's been called a fraud and her foundation shut down. Marianne Jolie investigates whether Somaly Mam lied to save girls from the trade.
I coming here since 1996. I come like around all Phnom Penh, all the area, and also around Cambodia too. Many of the women here, all of them, they are like prostitutes.
In a country still scarred by the cruel and sadistic crimes of the Khmer Rouge, Somaly Mam has been portrayed as a modern-day heroine to vulnerable girls and women. Today she's visiting local sex workers in the capital Phnom Penh. It's part of an outreach service for her local NGO that was set up almost 20 years ago to help women in distressing situations.
During the daytime, they look after the kids, and the nighttime, they go into the client.
One of the poorest nations in Asia, Cambodian women have a particularly tough time and have few options to survive.
You have to understand, you have to listen to their life. Why they have been trafficked, why they was in the brothel, why they are now in the brothel.
And because prostitution is illegal, women like these are exposed to rampant abuse.
They put her like this, and like there's something, the rat trap. They put her on side, and then 12 of them, they rape her one by one.
Somaly Mam says she knows firsthand about the suffering of these women.
I know that many people look down on me because what I have been through, but they never asked me why I was in the brothel. No one asking me. I get trafficked to the brothel. I get sold by my grandfather to the brothel.
It was this story of being trafficked into prostitution that took the world by storm. Her autobiography, published in 2005, became an international bestseller, launching her as a global face of sex trafficking campaigns. In 2007, a foundation bearing her name was set up in New York as the fundraising arm of her local NGO. Time magazine named her one of the world's most influential people, and she was endorsed by the US Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, Hollywood celebrities like Susan Sarandon, and business executives like Facebook's Sheryl Sandberg.
I want to acknowledge Somaly Mam, who is a survivor, who is a hero every single day in helping women and girls who have been abused to try to get their lives back.
Her beauty, charisma, and tragic personal story made a powerful combination, with the Somaly Mam Foundation raising around $3 million a year. But all this came to an abrupt end when Newsweek published an article claiming Somaly Mam's multi-million-dollar foundation was built on lies and that her personal story of being trafficked wasn't true. On the back of its own investigation, the Somaly Mam Foundation asked her to resign.
That is what they prepare. I apologize to the foundation, to the team, but also they want me to apologize to all the victims and survivors, and I tell them I never signed that.
But since then, the foundation's closed its doors, stopping the flow of funds to Somaly Mam's NGO, AFISIP. Today, a for sale sign hangs on the gate outside her family home. Somaly claims AFISIP has rescued some 4,000 women from sexual abuse over the years, providing many of them with shelter, education and vocational training. 12 of the women she's helped are now living with her. Sina Van says she was brought to AFISIP after she was trafficked from Vietnam to Cambodia as a 12-year-old. Like all the women here, she calls Somaly mother.
One day, I have been rescued by the police, and they have connected AFISIP. So did that, I meet with my mother, Somaly.
She worked for the Somaly Mam Foundation in Phnom Penh and says when it closed, she and the other women in Afasip's care was simply abandoned.
So all the girls don't have where they go. They don't have a computer, they don't have money to pay the university, they do not have money to run a home. So they come to stay with my mother, Somali, and she do not have money.
As night falls and dinner is served, the women express their gratitude to Somaly Mam.
Right now it's the difficult time. We don't have enough everything, but what that we have enough is love. We have love from mom. My mom loved all the victims. My mom never resigned from the victim. If my mom hurt, I hurt too.
I have been used whole life of my life. Everyone used me. I get hurt, I do it because of my girl. Bad treat all the time. Badly. But I keep. I don't want them to know. I cry a lot. And I always try to empower them. So I don't want them to say, Mommy get bad treat. In the foundation, I have no right to manage nothing. Because Somaly Mam Foundation, but I have no right to decide. They give me salary, they give me what they want to give. I have been used all time.
To investigate the veracity of Somaly Mam's personal story, we've come to her home village in the province of Kampong Chan, a couple of hours outside the capital, Phnom Penh. Somaly Mam tells of being abandoned by her parents as a young child and then becoming a slave to a man she refers to as her grandfather. This man, she says, sold her as a virgin, and after that she was sold into a brothel where she was abused for almost a decade. But come to this village where she supposedly grew up with this grandfather, and the villagers tell you quite a different story. Our first stop is the former commune chief, On Hock. He says Somaly came to the village with her parents, not her grandfather.
Both of her parents were teachers. They moved here to teach around late 1981. I don't know how old she was. She was still at school.
Around the corner and down the road a bit lives Tu Say. He was the principal of Somaly Mam's school from 1983 to 2005.
I assure you, I knew Somali very well for about 3 years.
He says Somaly Mam's father was on his staff.
I heard rumors in the village saying that Somaly Mam was an adopted child, but all I know is that both of them call each other father and daughter.
Former classmate Om Narat is preparing lunch, but she's happy to reminisce about her school days with Somaly Mam.
Somaly studied with me in 1986.
Somaly claims the grandfather she lived with sold her into marriage when she was 14, and she then left the village with her violent soldier husband. But Om Narat says Somaly was at least 16 when she knew her.
We did the exam to become teachers. I passed, but Somaly failed. She was just a normal girl, but not that polite.
She says Somaly lived with her parents and 5 siblings, and Somaly's grandparents lived in the house next door. After the girls left school, they lost contact with one another.
Maybe 92, 93 or 94, somewhere in that time frame, I saw her come back with her French husband. They arrived on a speedboat. It was quite a surprise. Everyone went to look at them, but I didn't want to go. I felt shy because she was enjoying a rich life.
Somaly's now former husband is Pierre Legros. In 1989, right at the end of the communist period, he was working for the French medical charity Doctors Without Borders.
It was very tense because war was still around Phnom Penh and in Cambodia. So on a Saturday with friends, we go around. And I met Somaly. She was a prostitute in a beer garden. Beer garden disco. It was not a brothel. It was not So the story started like that, and I fell in love and married her.
They went on to found and establish AFICIP together and had 2 children. But Pierre doesn't believe Somaly was trafficked.
I don't believe that. She was a prostitute, and I have nothing with that. The truth is the truth. But she is a victim of prostitution, surely victim of rape.
Did you ever exaggerate your story or lie about being trafficked in order to raise money for victims of trafficking?
I never lied to my story. How you can tell me that I'm lying to my story? That is my story. But ask me what I remember for whole life. I cannot tell you I remember all the detail because I was very teenager. I have been treated, I have been raped, I have been sold, I have been abused all the time. That's what I know, and also is what make me also strong too.
As well as being accused of fabricating her own story, Somaly Mam has been accused of coaching victims in AFICIP's care to fabricate their stories to attract attention and ultimately more funding.
I don't force a girl to say anything. My story, it is enough to cover all the girl's story.
One girl at the centre of the controversy is Long Pro. She told international media she was sold into prostitution and that she lost her eye when a pimp gouged it out. But her story is now under a cloud.
You know, I tell everyone, I'm a mother in the center. What my job do is give the girl love, hope, and warm enough. When a girl comes to me, she lost her eye is completely blind. What do you want me to tell her when she tell me she's been through all these things? You want me to say, okay, stop, I want to investigate you?
To find out for ourselves how Long Pro lost her eye, we travelled to her home village, about 5 hours southeast of Phnom Penh. Local villagers remember her well.
She had a bad eye and she didn't like to go outside of her house. It gradually grew bigger and bigger, and then she never left the house.
Her father didn't know where to take her for treatment. That's why the child stayed in the village for a long time.
Down the dirt track, Long Pro's parents are somewhat bemused by the interest in their daughter. But her father confirms she had a problem with her eye.
We didn't know much about the disease because it was so unusual. I don't know why her eye went like that. She was just a child and we were busy making our living, but her eye gradually grew bigger and bigger. We were very poor at the time, and then the NGO helped us, looked after us with the operation and food also.
Back in Phnom Penh, we meet a former AFICIP employee. She says she arranged with the doctors at the hospital where Long Pro had her tumour removed to bring her to an AFICIP shelter. She doesn't want to be identified for fear of reprisal.
She was not a victim of the brothels. Her eye was caused by a disease. I know this because the hospital told me face to face.
This woman says she worked for AFICIP for 14 years until she was laid off when the Somaly Mam Foundation closed.
There wasn't any story like Long Pro's, so they created it. The reality is it didn't happen. It had a very negative impact. It affected the child's reputation and the reputation of the child's family. It was done for personal benefit with no regard for another human being.
So had you ever heard the story about a tumour? But Somaly Mam is adamant the first time she heard about Long Pro having a tumour was when the local media reported it in 2012.
First of all, I don't know what a tumor means until I watching I try to find in the dictionary. I'm not a doctor, I'm not specialized on that. My work is loving my girl. My work is to protecting them. My work is to give my arm and my soul, my heart with her. Today, I still love my girl, I still love my daughter.
The Somaly Mam Foundation commissioned its own independent investigation. This document, leaked to 101 East, shows it found critical parts of Somali's story were false, and Long Pro had not been trafficked or stabbed by a brothel owner. Lies and deception are serious issues, but there seems to be an even darker side to Somaly Mam's NGO, AFICIP. Former insiders claim the management is dangerously flawed, corruption is entrenched, and worst of all, cases of abuse in shelters are covered up. Nali Pelorge is head of one of Cambodia's oldest human rights organisations, Licado. She says she's had serious concerns about AFICIP since the mid-2000s.
We were questioning about their internal policy, we were questioning about what kind of staff they were hiring, what kind of training they were providing to these staff. You're dealing with people who are in such a fragile state of mind that, you know, you just have to be so careful.
Yes, because
located on the outskirts of Phnom Penh is AFICIP's Tom Dai shelter. Now under threat of closure, only about 30 women remain out of the 60 or so who are usually sheltered here. We're told some women are victims of trafficking, some have been raped or sexually abused, others are simply vulnerable and poor. All have experienced trauma and are in need of counselling.
I sat in sessions with people who were sobbing, who were suicidal, who were desperate, who had not only did they...
Candice Blaze is a Washington-based therapist specialising in trauma. She volunteered for AFICIP in 2011.
They had one psychologist in every shelter for about 60 to 70 residents. So, whereas the international standard of care for trauma survivors is 1 to 10. Now, not everybody meets that standard, but 1 to 70 is quite out of line with that standard. And the psychologists that they had were very poorly trained.
Candice's role was to build up AFICIP's psychological resources. After 4 months, she proposed a psychologist be added to each centre, and she says she secured the funding for their $300 a month salaries. But she says Somali would not agree to it. Candice resigned soon after.
I was so outraged that these women who are already traumatized, severely traumatized, and Somaly Mam is stopping them from getting help. While she's on international TV, this and that, I love the girls. That's what she says all the time. I love the girls. If she was a traumatized person, just a Cambodian person who was just running a not so good organization, that'd be one thing. But she was an internationally acclaimed human rights activist who was getting millions of dollars to help women.
AFICIP's budget was more than $1 million a year, with around $700,000 in funding, plus Somaly Mam's $125,000 salary coming from the Somaly Mam Foundation. But according to Somaly, the budget was to blame for counselling shortfalls.
We cannot survive. Years and years we cannot even survive. Sometimes we don't have food at the center. I know that psychology is so important, but for me, eating is so important to survive first. When I'm full, and then we can go to see psychology guy.
But the former AFICIP employee suggests there was something more sinister at play.
The question is, who was in charge of the food? The person was Somali's mother. So, if a mother was in charge of cooking, why was the food of poor quality and not enough?
She's also asking questions about where the rest of AFICIP's budget went.
I know Somali owns 10,000 square meters of land in Siem Reap. She bought a lot of land in Pailing province, and she bought a lot of properties in Phnom Penh, and the staff members surrounding her are all her relatives, and every one of them now own houses. The question is, where did those people make their money? I don't know. If you look at their salaries, they probably couldn't afford that.
This is not the first time AFICIP has been suspected of misappropriation. In the mid-2000s, a Spanish donor organisation, ANASVAD, had growing concerns about the NGO's accounting practices. We tracked down one of ANASVAD's former employees, Ana Marin Fernandez, at home in Spain.
On one hand, there were not enough invoices to account to the amounts that they were receiving from ANASVAD. And secondly, some of the invoices were kind of repeated. There were like 2 copies of the same invoices. I mean, in the end, it really turned out to be that there has been some sort of forgery, because we could also see that when we visited the projects, you could not really see the impact.
But ANASVAD had even graver concerns. Almost a decade ago, it partly financed this film, Mekong Butterflies, to showcase Somaly Mam's work with victims of sex trafficking. But during the filming, the young woman featured told the filmmaker of sexual abuse in Afasip's Siem Reap shelter. A victim of trafficking, Vesna had gone on to work for Afasip. We Skyped the filmmaker and journalist Pedro Barbadillo in Mallorca, Spain.
She told us that she had had some problems with the manager and the staff in the center, who were asking her to accept sexual relations, and she didn't want. And so she was very angry and went to Somaly Mam to denounce it. And when she went there the next day, she was fired. She got a letter.
Pedro went on to interview 6 women as part of an investigation for the Spanish donor organisation, and says he found evidence of systematic sexual abuse and possible rapes at the shelter. ANASVAD severed its ties with Somaly Mam.
ANASVAD asked Somaly to give an explanation what was happening. She denied all these things, but 1 week later she fired these 2 persons because of going to take beers with the girls. She didn't accept the main reason, but indirectly she reacted by firing or saying that they have fired it.
One of the people Somaly supposedly fired was the manager of the shelter, O Safan. He denies abusing women, but singles out the other man who was dismissed as the problem.
Pana was very cheeky and he had many women. Just between us, he's a very bad person. That's why the problem came to me as the manager.
But Somaly claims she was unable to find any evidence of abuse.
We have the team, obviously we have the teamwork, we're going around, we're asking the girl questioning one by one, but the problem is that we have nothing proved.
But did you actually call the police so that it was an independent investigation?
If you don't have the proof, how you can call it to the police?
When there's information about abuse in the center, which is very, very common, the first step is you cannot do it. You cannot do your own investigation. The whole point is to be independent, and the head of a legitimate center would never respond like that.
With her reputation shattered after the media expose, some might think it's an impossible road back for Somaly Mam. But the former anti-sex trafficking icon is not about to abandon her cause.
We're going to, I call Kampung Cham Center, but the girl they hate it, they call Somaly House. Some of them they will stay like 2-3 years. Some of them they stay longer, more than 10 years, different of the families. But some of them they don't have family because they've been sold quite young. They are my key.
The children are lined up waiting for her arrival. Their smiling faces can't be identified. Surrounded by her team of survivors, Somaly Mam's looking to the future. She's launching a new foundation backed by some ardent supporters and a New York-based celebrity PR firm advising her.
1, 2, 3.
We are the new Somaly Mam Fund, Voice for Change. In the future, my dream is I want to have all these women and girls. I want them to be like little Somali, future Somali. It's not just about me. I talked to the foundation, I want to have like 90% of the staff are survivors. So I want them to become a lawyer, to become a manager, to become accounting, to become like fighter.
Somaly Mam may dream, but it will be up to the world to decide whether she can be trusted again.
It's easy if you're photogenic and if you have a sense of marketing, but we're not dealing with puppies and kittens. We're dealing with children and people. And so we as NGOs and donors and governments, we have to ask many, many questions. The people that are thinking of giving her money, they need to be responsible. There's been too much deceptions and lies and harm.